What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here with the Odd Shopper channel. And today we are doing an NFL mock draft, but not just any mock draft. We are giving you a prop bet associated with each individual pick. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We are also brought to you today by Underdog Fantasy. And if you've never heard of Underdog, they have all sorts of contests available to you guys. If you use the promo code Awesemo, you are going to get a match deposit bonus up to $100. So make sure to check out Underdog Fantasy today. Diving into today's mock draft, we are going to be doing a predictive mock draft, but trying to find a way you can profit on it. And we're going to kick things off with pick number 1. It is the Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock, and Travon Walker is the pick coming out of Georgia. Now, the odds have shifted drastically in this market. If we were talking Monday, you could still get Travon Walker plus money to be the number 1 overall pick. Now he is sitting around a minus 200, minus 225. I don't love those odds, but I do think he's going to be the pick. So at the number 1 overall position, it's probably just a stay away for me. And that's because Trent Baalke, the general manager of the Jaguars, he's been linked to Walker. Walker 6'5", 272. Ran a 4.5 140-yard dash, so amazing athleticism. And Trent Baalke has a history of drafting these tools-based prospects. So I do think he'll be the pick. If you're just looking for a long shot, Aiden Hutchinson at plus 250, he was the favorite for most of the time through the pre-draft process. So maybe you could look to make some money there. But overall, Walker is going to be the pick for me. I'm not too interested in the number 1 overall betting market at this point. And number 2 is Aiden Hutchinson to the Detroit Lions. It's kind of the same story here. So if Hutchinson doesn't come off the board, I do expect their reunion. The hometown kid goes to Detroit. Hutchinson went to Michigan, of course. He was hurt in 2020, but he emerged as an amazing pass rusher in his final season. And the Detroit Lions were bottom 3 in sacks this past year. So the marriage makes sense here. But now Aiden Hutchinson is minus 300 to be the 2nd overall pick. If you want to just flip the odds and do Aiden Hutchinson first, that's plus 250. And then Travon Walker second is plus 650. If it were to swing that way, you could make a large payoff, but just seems very unlikely at this point based on experts, based on the betting markets right now. But number 3 is where we can start making some money. And this is a spot I do like to target. Kayvon Thibodeaux at number 3 to Houston. A couple reasons I think this could happen. Lovie Smith is a defensive-oriented coach. There's a lot of rumors of him taking Sauce Gardner here, but if you look at the edge, it's arguably just as large of a need here. We're talking about Okoronkwo and Jonathan Grenard and Derek Rivers being the best pass rushers this team has. They took Blacklock on the interior most recently, but I mean, this team is very vacant in terms of pass rushers. Thibodeaux is the best player on the board. You just have to be comfortable with the character concerns that are alleged there. But I can still find Thibodeaux plus 450 to go number 3 overall. This is a spot I do think is possible. Right now, the betting favorite is Sauce Gardner, but Thibodeaux, much better odds and still very likely in my opinion. So we'll do a prop bet plus 450 on Kayvon Thibodeaux, number 3 overall. And number 4, the Jets are on the clock, and they have a lot of needs, and there's a lot of ways they can go. People have been mocking them offensive line because of the issues with Mekhi Becton. You'll see them get mocked edge with Jermaine Johnson or Thibodeaux if he's there. But they have a need at wide receiver, and Garrett Wilson's on the board. He is the betting favorite to be the first receiver selected. That's minus 110, and that's my favorite prop with Garrett Wilson right now. I don't like his over-under as much because of the volatility in the receiver market, but if you just look first wide receiver at minus 110, those are pretty good odds for him. The Jets drafted Elijah Moore last year, but they still need help. And Garrett Wilson is a 3-year producer with Ohio State, got on the field immediately as a freshman, ran a 4.38 40-yard dash. So he can certainly fill the field stretching role for them. And overall, if you want to do the marriage, Wilson to the Jets, you can still find Jets plus 350 to take a wide receiver with their first pick, which is one I do like to get ahead of some of the other teams that could be trading up into the top 10. Again, the Jets pick at number 10 as well. So overall, Garrett Wilson, first receiver to be drafted minus 110 favorite bet here. At number 5, first offensive lineman comes off the board. It is Evan Neal. And I think this is a legit possibility. Evan Neal's a multi-year start at Alabama across positions. He's about 6'8", 337, 34-inch arms. Didn't test, but it's evident he plays well for his size. The Giants need to continue building around Daniel Jones, and they addressed receiver last year. Now they hit offensive line. It's a matter of, is it Evan Neal or is it Ike Ekwonu? Evan Neal, first offensive lineman to be selected, is plus 300. And this is a legitimate potential here. I think just taking the odds with Evan Neal does make a lot of sense. A polished starter and someone you can slot in day one to that Giants offensive line that already has Andrew Thomas, but still looking to bolster the unit overall. At number 6, it's Carolina. A lot of people mocking QBs here. I don't see it. It's a team that's not ready to win now. They don't have any draft capital on day 3, or excuse me, on day 2, no second or third rounder. So this is a chance for them to move back. But overall in this mock, I want to talk Ike Ekwonu, the other tackle. And if we're doing a mock without trades, which we are here, I would mock them Ekwonu or Evan Neal, whoever is there. Ekwonu is arguably one of the better pass protectors in this class after last year, showed a lot of growth in that realm. And right now, his over-under is 4.5. If you bet over 4.5 at plus 120, that's a solid bet to me. In the top 4 picks, I think you really just have New York, who's looking at a tackle, the New York Jets, that is. And there's a lot of needs on that team. Wouldn't be surprised if the Jets go corner. Wouldn't be surprised if they go receiver. Or if they go offensive line, but they just don't get Ekwonu and they take Evan Neal instead. So over plus 4.5 is the pick here. And with that said, Carolina has this trade chip that they could potentially trade back. I do think we see some trades in the top 10, probably for positions of strength like tackle, like corner, like receiver. So don't be surprised if it's not even the Panthers making this pick and it's someone trying to come up for a receiver or something like that to maybe get ahead of the Jets. Pick number 7, the Giants are back on the clock, and they just take best available player here. It is Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner, phenomenal prospect. He doesn't have a lot of production, but honestly, that's a positive for him because offenses just chose to avoid him at all costs. He's very lengthy. He's athletic. He's 6'3", 190, 4.41 speed. Never allowed a touchdown in college. But again, like Ike Ekwonu, a lot of these props are elevated at this point in the draft. His over-under is plus 5.5. That's also plus 120. If you look at these players in tandem and take the overs on Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, and Sauce Gardner, it's pretty likely that one of them falls outside the top 5, if not the top 2. And Ike Ekwonu's is at 4.5. There's just teams at the top that don't have as many needs for the position, specifically corner. You look at 1 and 2. The Jaguars and the Lions are likely taking edge. Houston could take a corner, but they're also very needy on the edge. Wouldn't be surprised if it's Thibodeau. The Jets have needs everywhere. Offensive line, receiver, even defensive line. If there's an edge there, wouldn't be surprised there. So if the Jets don't take him, if the Houston Texans don't take him, are the Giants going to? I mean, they still have James Bradbury, but he's expected to move on. They have a drastic need on the offensive line. Wouldn't be a shock if Sauce Gardner falls this far. Over 5.5 plus 20 makes some sense to me. Just betting the odds here. Love them as a player. Wouldn't be surprised if he falls. At number 8, Atlanta needs everywhere. They move on from Matt Ryan. They go full rebuild. They bring in Mariota as the stopgap, but they start adding playmakers to the offense ahead of getting their quarterback of the future. It's Jameson Williams out of Alabama, tore his ACL in the college football playoff, transferred from Ohio State, but that is not a knock against him. There are 3 first-round picks within that offense, and it's not like he transfers to a G5. He goes to Alabama, and he racks up 1,572 yards and 79 catches. Likely has the best speed in this class. We don't know for sure just because couldn't test with the ACL. But Atlanta needs to replace some receivers. Ridley is not with the team at this moment. We'll see if he can ever come back. But with Jameson Williams, my favorite bet in the prop bet markets is for him to go top 10. We got some positive news on the injury front recently. Jameson Williams was expected to miss multiple games this year, maybe even a majority of the season, but he is allegedly ahead of schedule in his rehab, put out some promising videos. And I think that bodes well for him playing at least half the season, maybe even more. So for Jameson Williams going top 10, it was plus money earlier in the week. It is now minus 125. I am still more than comfortable laying those odds with Jameson Williams. We'll take him minus 125 to go in the top 10. Seattle at number 9 is a very interesting situation here, but they have Jermaine Johnson. And Jermaine Johnson is a player who has been mocked a little higher. I've seen some people even toy with him at 3 over Kayvon Thibodeau. But ultimately, Kayvon Thibodeau is more athletic. Kayvon Thibodeau has more production, and Jermaine Johnson had to transfer to Florida State to get that production. Now, he transferred from Georgia, so it is the most prolific defensive line in football. But Johnson, he did produce immediately when the transfer occurred. 12 sacks. He's 6'5", 254, ACC Defensive Player of the Year, ran a 4.58, so he checks every box other than the early production. Seattle, they have needs everywhere. They have the quarterback need, of course, needs in the offensive line, but they also have one of the worst edge groups. This is a team that whiffed on LJ Collier just a few years ago, and I think this is a spot where Jermaine Johnson comes off the board and maybe even his floor. It's a tough spot to bet. Right now, his over-under's at 9.5, so you're kind of playing with fire here due to the other edge prospects ahead of him. It's minus 145 towards the under, so probably stay away in the betting markets, but if you're looking for something on Jermaine Johnson, it'd probably be the under for me. At number 10, Derek Stingley finally comes off the board. This is a player that does have concerns. We know what they are. It's injury-related. Missed a lot of time the last 2 seasons, but his freshman tape at LSU is among the best in this class, and he also squashed some injury concerns running the 4.44 40-yard dash at his pro day. There's rare athleticism, there's rare production on the profile, and the New York Jets do have a need at corner. Now, Stingley is climbing up boards fast. On Monday, the over-under for his draft position was 9.5. It's now 7.5. Again, think about the players on the board right now. Kayvon Thibodeau, Garrett Wilson, Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, Sauce Gardner. These players all have over-unders in this range, and they cannot all hit. Derek Stingley has arguably the most concerns of this group among all the players listed, except for maybe Thibodeau due to character. I do think Stingley comes off early, but 7.5 is very rich. Do we really see a team trading up to get Derek Stingley when there's other positions of need like receiver and tackle that are a little more thin? I don't see it, so I'm still willing to go over 7.5 for Derek Stingley at minus 105. At number 11, we have the Washington Commanders on the board, and they select USC's Drake London. This is a spot that is widely mocked to be a safety. Kyle Hamilton's a popular pick here. But ultimately, I think they address the quarterback position, something they've already tried to do this offseason. They bring in Carson Wentz. And what better way to address the quarterback position with the player that you think is the future than by adding more pass catchers? Drake London provides a solid complement to Terry McLaurin. He's a former basketball player. Drake London, 6'4", 219. Didn't test due to the broken ankle he sustained in the regular season, but the guy had nearly 1,100 receiving yards in 8 games. That's just elite territory. And I think there's a chance he could even come off the board earlier. We already mocked Garrett Wilson and Jameson Williams ahead of him, but Drake London is right in that conversation. And my favorite bet here is actually Drake London, first wide receiver to come off the board at plus 250. Now, I don't think it's the most likely situation, but the odds here are just too much to pass up. Plus 250 for Drake London to be the first receiver off the board. Favorite prop bet with the USC product. At number 12, we have the Vikings on the clock. A new regime, so it's tough to peg what they are going to do, but they seem to be very analytically friendly, and they have a need along the defensive line. Long are the days where this was the strength of the defense. Those days are gone, and they can plug a major hole by taking Jordan Davis. And from an analytical perspective, this is arguably the most athletic human being that has ever entered the NFL. He stands 6'6", 341, ran a 4.78 40-yard dash and a 32-inch vertical. Those aren't eye-popping numbers, but remember, this guy's nearly 350 pounds. He did not play a full complement of snaps at Georgia, but he never needed to. This is a tools-based product who's coming out of the best defensive line in college football. He can play with Minnesota right away. And when you look at his props, listed at 15.5 earlier in the week, that is now down to 14.5. The under is minus 140. So this is already pretty juiced. It's not one that I'm adding to my card, but if I were betting Jordan Davis, this is where I would lean. I think he comes off the board in this range. At 13, the Texans are back on the clock. In this mock draft, they've already addressed the edge with Kayvon Thibodeau. The corners are off the board, so you don't have the chance to double up with a Sauce Gardner or a Derek Stingley, and there's a drop-off after that. So they're another team dealing with a young quarterback, Davis Mills. They have Brandon Cooks, the field stretcher. They have Nico Collins, your theoretical X of the future. Now you can add the Z with Chris Olave, a receiver who's ready to produce right now. Best receiver in terms of route running in this class. He's coming out of Ohio State, and he's a player who's produced at every turn with the Buckeyes. With Chris Olave, the under on him is sitting at 16.5, except the juice is minus 205. So for Chris Olave, that's probably the way I want to go. But I think if you wait, you could probably get a 15.5 later in the week, maybe on Thursday morning before the first round, and probably get a little bit better juice. I still think he goes under 15.5, so I'm willing to wait on this. Again, currently the line is 16.5, but minus 205 juice on that. At number 14, we have the Baltimore Ravens on the clock, and they're in an interesting situation overall at this point in the draft. They can potentially take Charles Cross, who's maybe not the best fit for them, but he is an offensive tackle and the best player on the board offensively, in my opinion. He played at Mississippi State and wasn't recruited to play in this offense initially. They had a coaching change, go to Mike Leach, and obviously Mike Leach is running that air raid scheme. So Charles Cross has more pass protection, production, and experience than any other player in this class. Now, the Ravens are very run-heavy under Lamar Jackson, but anytime you can grab the best available tackle, I think that's something you have to look at. I've seen Jordan Davis mocked here if he's available, but again, Charles Cross, just best available player. And right now, his over-under is 6.5. So again, this is a Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, Sauce Gardner situation where they can't all go top 6. There's more people in terms of Vegas numbers in that range than there actually are available players to go. There's just not that many teams that can pick them. So Charles Cross at plus 6.5, over 6.5 that is, it's at plus 155. If you just look at betting markets, he's projected to be the third tackle coming off the board, and he's at 6.5. So do we really think Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, and Charles Cross come off the board in the top 6? I personally do not. And I'm willing to take plus 155 money that Charles Cross comes off the board outside the top 6. In this mock, it lines up with that, him falling to the Ravens here at 14. At 15, we have the Philadelphia Eagles on the clock here, and they've taken receiver in the first round the last 2 years. They missed on Rager. It looks like Smith is a fine player, still only 1 year, not 100% sure what he's going to offer them. But either way, they need more help, and they take Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. He's the 5th receiver off the board. And again, this is a spot where a lot of teams might be trading up for a receiver. If you look later in the first round, Saints need receiver. The Eagles need receiver. We just gave them one. But New England could use a receiver. The Packers certainly need one post Devontae Adams. The Chiefs certainly need one post Tyreek Hill. Even the Bills are a sneaky team maybe to take a position of strength. So these receivers are going to come off early and often, and don't be surprised if there's 4 or 5 in the top 15 due to trade situations, and maybe even if there's not. In this particular scenario, the Eagles are ahead of the Saints, and they take Treylon Burks, who's a 6'2", 225 prospect, racked up 1,100 yards this past year. Didn't test as well as some expected, but GPS tracking data suggests that that is not a major concern. Under 23.5 is minus 125 for Treylon Burks. This is one of my favorite bets in all of mock drafts this year. That is one I already have myself, and I will likely be taking again before the draft. At 16, the Saints miss out on the wide receiver run. And again, it's not that they might not trade up and take one. They very well could. They have the capital. They have 2 picks in the first round, also at 19. But in this mock, they have to reach a little bit on Trevor Penning. And for betting, prop betting, Trevor Penning is a player that you can grab in the 30s. And this is one I definitely like. I would take Trevor Penning down into, the mid-teens here. He's a player that's seen his line move. And this is a guy that's coming out of Northern Iowa, but overall, he's 6'7", 325, ran a 4.89, which is a phenomenal athletic showing for a player of his size. Now, there are concerns with Penning. He's coming out of a low level of competition. They did show him at the Senior Bowl, and he played very well there. But the Saints have a need at tackle. Overall, they're losing Teron Armstead, so finding Trevor Penning could make some sense here. And excuse me, earlier, I think I said his prop was in the 30s. It's at 16.5. That was a mistake by me. 16.5 for Trevor Penning. So as far as betting markets, this probably isn't one I want to take. Under 16.5 is minus 160. Again, I haven't projected at 16 to the Saints, so not much juice left here in the prop market for Penning. At number 17, the Chargers are on the clock. A bit of a luxury pick for them. They did a lot of spending in free agency with the rookie quarterback, or on the rookie deal, I should say. And they can take Trent McDuffie. So a couple reasons McDuffie makes sense here. He's the corner coming out of Washington. Some people are expecting a fall for McDuffie. That's because he did not check in with elite size. He's 5'11", 193 with short arms. and he's slower than expected for a player of this size, just a 4.44. Some players will maybe limit him to the slot, and he's not a fit for teams that play a lot of press coverage. Luckily, with the Chargers, he probably doesn't have to do that. Right now, his prop is sitting at 16.5. The over is minus 115. So this is another one where I think we're right in his range and probably not betting Trent McDuffie. But if you do see a slide, I would not be surprised because of the size limitations. He's just not going to be a fit for everybody. At number 18, we have the Eagles back on the clock. They address receiver with Treylon Burks, and they could continue to add players on offense. This is just maybe we need to really see what Jalen Hurts has. Maybe they're just preparing for whatever future signal caller they do decide to go get. They have a lot of capital next year too. But on top of grabbing a receiver, we can grab an offensive lineman. And at this point, Philadelphia's offensive line is still pretty strong. I wouldn't say it's the deepest, but they can grab a position of strength and play into this future production by grabbing Boston College's Zion Johnson. He's 6'3", 312, started 49 career games. And again, the Eagles have struggled with depth at times. I think he fills a nice need for them. And at the very least, there's other teams with this need later in the draft. So for his prop, under 24.5, minus 125, another one I already jumped on. I think he's one of the better interior offensive linemen with versatility to play across schemes and positions in this draft. At 19, the Saints are back on the clock, a spot where I think you could see them reach on receiver, but ultimately they do have multiple needs across their offense, across their defense. They go with Purdue's George Karlaftis, the edge rusher. From a values perspective, this makes a lot of sense. I do not think they're taking quarterback here. The prospects just aren't up with Jameis Winston in terms of talent. Karlaftis had 14.5 sacks, 30.5 tackles for loss in his career with Purdue on a unit that was widely regarded as poor and allowing other teams to just double team him. They do have a lot of edge rushers, but Cameron Jordan is aging, and we've seen the Saints take a priority with this position. So Karlaftis, I do think he makes some sense here with the Saints. In the prop betting markets, under 22.5 is where you're going to find this, and it's at plus 110. Not my favorite prop, but definitely one I'm willing to sprinkle a little bit on. I think we're in the Karlaftis range, but under 22.5 at plus money does make a lot of sense here. At 20, the Steelers are on the clock, and our first quarterback comes off the board. It's Malik Willis out of Liberty. When we look at the quarterback market, we know it's weak, but because of positional value, we know that a couple are probably going to go in the first round. A team like the Steelers, who often ignores analytics and conventional wisdom, makes a lot of sense here. They could also just bet on the athletic traits. Malik Willis is one of the best athletes in this class. He actually forced more missed tackles than Kenneth Walker on many fewer carries. But from a quarterback perspective, there's a lot to be desired. He played at Liberty, low level of competition. He did not produce elite numbers at that school. So you are drafting a projection here. Right now, Malik Willis's number is tumbling. The over was at 10.5 earlier this week. Now it is at 13.5 minus 130. I grabbed the 10.5, but 13.5 is still, I think, a completely fine line to take here with Malik Willis. At 21, the Patriots are on the board. Very difficult team to predict, but one player I definitely want to get in the first round or want to mention their prop is Tyler Smith. So we will include him here to the Patriots. A couple things with the fits. Overall, we've seen the Patriots prioritize offensive line. Tyler Smith doesn't have quite ideal size. He's 6'5", 324, not the longest arms, but we've seen the Patriots take undersized linemen before, like Isaiah Wynn. So I do like the fit here. His prop is at 32.5, minus 115. This is falling. It was at 33.5 earlier this week. So another one I would try to take immediately if you can. I grabbed the 33.5, but already more than willing to take the 32.5 as well. Again, minus 115 is the juice. Green Bay Packers on the clock. They missed out on the first wide receiver run. They have a lot of draft capital, so don't be surprised if they trade up for a receiver. But in this instance, they take one of the better available players in Sky Moore. You will hear a lot of people talk Sky Moore versus Jahan Dotson. Dotson played at the better school. Sky Moore went to Western Michigan. Dotson went to Penn State. But Sky Moore's bigger, and he's faster. He's 195 pounds. We have Dotson sub 180. And then 40-yard dash. Sky Moore was faster. He ran a 4.41. We know the Packers do have size thresholds at the receiver position, so this is why Sky Moore gets the edge for me. He logged nearly 2,500 receiving yards in his career with Western Michigan and would have been more had he not played a shortened COVID season in their second most recent year. His prop is at 35.5. Under 35.5 plus 110. That is a phenomenal number on the under for a player who could sneak into the first round for a number of reasons, not just because he's a riser in the process, but receivers are just drawing astronomical money on the open market. So if you're in the back half of the first round, it makes a lot more sense to spend that fifth-year option on a receiver at this point than it does a position maybe of strength in this class like interior offensive line, but just not one you need to pay a lot of money in the future. So Sky Moore, definitely think he's going to come off the board late first round. Love the under 35.5 plus 110. Arizona Cardinals. Now, a very interesting team, and I really want to talk about this player, but they finally stopped the slide of Notre Dame's Kyle Hamilton. A popular mock for him is Washington, but again, Washington has so many needs. I don't think they make that luxury pick. The Cardinals kind of can at this point in the draft. Kyle Hamilton tested very poorly. This is a strong safety class, which hurts him. There's a lot of names on day 2, like Daxton Hill, among others. And safety is a devalued position. So how many teams in this range are trying to hit safety? And then when we look at his prop, it's 12.5. The over 12.5 is plus 120. I still like this number. Obviously, it's towing the Washington line at 11. Before it was 10.5, and it's now fallen below that Washington mark. So they are very much viewed as the team that's going to take him if somebody does. But we're looking at just one team really that's going to try to fill this need in the top 12. So I'm comfortable still with the over here, especially if teams start trading up. Think about the positions of need in this class. If there's trades, it's probably not going to be for a devalued position like Kyle Hamilton. So over 12.5 plus 120, that's one I like. At 24, Dallas is on the clock. They missed out on most of the good offensive line talent, but I guess lucky for the Cowboys right now in the draft, but not lucky for them in the season. The offensive line of old, the former best offensive line in football, has taken a lot of hits. And now they have needs across the board, interior tackle, you name it. And some of their starters have been battling injuries recently, exacerbating the issues. They get Texas A&M's Kenyon Green, a plug-and-play interior offensive line starter. He's 6'4", 323, started 3 straight years in the SEC for Texas A&M. This is a spot I do particularly like. His under's 27.5, which isn't my favorite among prop bets, but I still think it is worth betting, just maybe not one full unit. You can find that minus 115. The Bills at 25 are a really fun team to bet, I think, and the reason is they're widely mocked Breece Hall. Now, there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't make sense, and it's not just because anytime running backs get big contracts, at least recently, it doesn't work out. Any recent first-round draft pick at the running back position hasn't worked out. But the Bills are an analytical team. They're not some team that is just reaching because they think their roster is close to the Super Bowl. You can expand your Super Bowl window by drafting players of value, and they do so here at the cornerback position with Andrew Booth. They do have some injuries on the back end on their roster, so I think this also gives them some security. Booth, they call him an injury risk. This is the draft media, but he's dealing with a sports hernia. I mean, this is an injury that heals in the season 4 to 6 weeks. It just so happened to occur during the combine, like right around that time, so he couldn't test. But Andrew Booth is a hyper-productive 2-year starter for Clemson. He's 6 feet, 195 pounds, and the athleticism looks fine on tape. I do think he's a first-round player, and his over-under is at 29.5 right now. The under's at plus money at 130. That's one I'll be taking myself here as well, with Buffalo adding to a position of strength and planning for the future. At 26, the Tennessee Titans are on the board, and they've done a lot of work on these quarterback prospects. Kenny Pickett's the pick here coming out of Pittsburgh. He is more of a one-year wonder. He did start multiple seasons, but he showed incredible development and had his best season this most recent year. A lot of issues with Pickett, including the offense he ran, the struggles he's had under pressure. But the Titans can save a lot of money by moving on from Ryan Tannehill next season and just going with a younger option. Ryan Tannehill took a major step back last year, so I do think this is something that the Tennessee Titans can do. Kenny Pickett's over-under is plummeting. On Monday, it was 12.5. It's now 16.5. The over on this is 125. I took it at 12.5 myself, but still comfortable with 16.5 with Pickett. I think the top place he could possibly go outside of a random trade up situation would be the Steelers at 20. 27, we have Tampa Bay on the clock, one of the more Super Bowl ready teams in the NFC. They take a position of strength here with Devontae Wyatt. This is another complete roster already. This is the third defensive lineman from Georgia to come off the board. He's going to slide in alongside Vita Vea in this situation. Wyatt, 6'3", 304 pounds, ran a 4.77 40-yard dash, which, I mean, he's overshadowed by Jordan Davis, but that is still elite testing numbers for him. There are some concerns when we think about this from a betting perspective. He allegedly has some character concerns, but Wyatt's just too good of a player, in my opinion, to fall out of the first round. His over-under is 29.5 minus 115. I would bet the under on that, but I honestly think if you wait, you can get a better number because of some of the concerns that have been raised in recent days. So I'm not pulling the trigger on Wyatt just yet. Going to wait until perhaps Thursday morning and try to get the best line possible on this under 29.5. Green Bay's on the clock here again at 28, and they take sliding Devin Lloyd off the board, top linebacker here. Green Bay, they've been linked to a lot of linebackers in this draft. They've been linked to players like Nakobe Dean as well, but Lloyd is on the board, and there's a couple reasons here why I think Lloyd could fall. It's actually similar to a Kyle Hamilton situation. Linebacker is just a devalued position. Lloyd is an old prospect coming out of Utah, and he had an amazing season this last year. 22 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 10 passes defended, 4 interceptions. Athletic too, ran a 4.66, but it took him so many years to actually produce on the field at Utah. I think he'll come off the board in the first round. It just might be as early as people expect. His over-under is 19.5, and that's minus 125. Not my favorite bet on the board, but still something that I'm worth taking overall. I'm willing to take here. Over 19.5, minus 125. At 29, the Chiefs are on the board. They do have some draft capital here, so they could maybe make a play up the board in a trade-up situation for a receiver. But I think they just take Jahan Dotson in this situation. We laid out reasons why the Packers might prefer Sky Moore over Dotson, but ultimately Dotson played at the better school. He was highly productive at Penn State, and he's athletic himself, 5'11", 178 pounds, 4.43 40-yard dash, and that's not Tyreek Hill speed, but they still need to replace that position in the offense. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is not Tyreek Hill. They need to add additional weapons at the receiver position, and Dotson at this point in the draft makes a lot of sense. On Monday, his over-under was 31.5. It's now 30.5. I still like the under on that, minus 125. And there's another bet we're going to talk about in a little bit, which also fits this mold, where we think a lot of receivers are going to come off the board because the market for them has been incredibly hot of late. At pick 30, the Chiefs are also on the clock here. Another reason they might trade up, they have this extra capital, and they're an NFL potential Super Bowl winning team. But in this situation, they take Bernard Raymond. He is a MAC prospect coming out of Central Michigan. He's 6'6", 303 pounds, and he's a converted tight end. So that might seem a little light for a tackle. It is. He's only been playing the tackle position for a few years now. But overall, he has elite athleticism because of his former position at the tight end. And he still has the chance to add weight to the frame and grow as he continues to get coaching at this position. His over-under is 37.5. It was minus 115, now minus 135. I think because of the value at the tackle position, he is a strong candidate to slide into the back half of the first round. I'll take the under 37.5 minus 135. Already grabbed this one. At 31, we have Cincinnati, the team that made the Super Bowl, unfortunately lost. The offensive line, it's been an issue, but they tried to bandage over that in free agency. And at this point in the draft, we don't have some of the best prospects left. We do have some fringe edge prospects that are first rounders. There's Arnold Ebiketie, there's Boy Mafe, and Boy Mafe is where the Bengals go here. Now, Ebiketie has more production. These guys have similar athleticism, but Boy Mafe played for a Minnesota team that just didn't have a lot of juice, similar to like a George Karlaftis. Teams could just double team Mafe. He's 6'4", 261, ran a 4.53, and he's certainly been a riser in this process. He's impressed a lot of teams overall throughout the pre-draft process. His over-under is 31.5. Under is minus 130. It's a stay away for me, but I like Mafe in the first round. Last team, we have Detroit, and this is a spot where maybe even Detroit doesn't pick, but a team tries to come up and take a quarterback late in the first round, get that fifth-year option. I think the same thing could happen for receiver, and we alluded to this with Sky Moore, with Jahan Dotson. Christian Watson is a dark horse to come into the first round of this draft. Now, the Lions, again, I don't know if they're going to be making this pick, but they certainly need receiver help if they do. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They bring in DJ Chark, but they definitely need more options to help Jared Goff or whoever that quarterback of the future is they end up going with. Watson, 6'4", 208, ran a 4.36 40-yard dash, played at the FCS North Dakota State. That's a really run-heavy team, but when he did get the ball, he was incredibly productive. They used him a lot on jet sweeps. And when he was a receiver, also productive there. The bet here isn't Christian Watson. It's actually over 6.5 receivers to go in the first round, -110. This is at 6 flat on some books. If that's the line, I'd lay the juice. I'm not worried about a push here. I think at least 7, if not 8 receivers come off the board. This could be a record-breaking year for receivers just because we have the talent at the top and they're getting paid astronomical money on the open market. But that is the NFL draft, the mock draft for 2022 with props associated. Let me know what your favorite props are in this draft, and I'll be sure to let you know mine. I am Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.